All right. So, first and foremost, a quick overview of the original title we wanted for this session, which is why web designers and developers will love SharePoint 2013. But the marketing guys said it was actually my job to convince you in the next hour. So you guys will get to decide if this should have been the title. But the 2 points I want you to take away, first and foremost, any web designer and developer can easily work with SharePoint 2013. In the past, when we've talked about SharePoint at conferences like these or other events, we often talked about the features of SharePoint, the kind of sites you could build, the kind of queries you could do. And we sort of brushed under the carpet how you'd work with a design agency to actually build those things, the enjoyment they would have in that process, what they might charge you compared to working on other platforms. We're no longer doing that. I'm incredibly excited that this is the session where front and center is the design and development experience. And you'll see a ton of that. Secondly, I do want to point out, in addition to a lot of what you're going to see today about working with the markup directly, there is a lot of work we've done under the hood, so to speak, to make SharePoint a much better WCM platform. Things around markup quality and others that you won't be seeing as visually today, but they're in many ways just as important. Of course, don't take our word for it. I wanted to put up a few laudatory quotes because none of you have had the chance to write your own yet, but I'm sure when I check Twitter in 75 minutes, I'll have lots more to replace for the next run of this session. But I did want to point out a couple of things. One, for those of you who know Joel Olison, SharePoint Joel, he's actually here at the demo booth, and I don't know if he's in the room, so I won't try to shame him. He might not have gotten in. But he had his list of the top 10 features in SharePoint 2013, and 4 of them, it's that exciting. I know. All right. All right. And I will say, on his list of top 10 new features, you're going to see 4 of them today. I'm not going to read you the quote, but I promise you'll see them all. You can play bingo as we go through if you would like. I challenge you to find any other session of the SharePoint conference that hits that many of the top features. And the last one, the quote that I, in many ways, am so excited about, it's frankly one of the things that we wanted people to say when we started planning this release back in 2010, 2009, was don't be surprised if SharePoint starts hitting the top right Gartner Magic Quadrant for web content management. I'm really excited, actually, during SharePoint conference, Gartner's asked us to start prepping some stuff. I think some of them are even here. So if you're here, CMS Wire is right. Pay attention. We'll talk some more. And hopefully you'll all believe it. So first and foremost, let's go under the covers of SharePoint and talk about some of the improvements from markup. Like I said before, it's one of the key areas that we wanted to focus on. It's a big deal for users because it tends to mean better performance in browsing the site, usually smaller page weight, better rendering time, certainly in accessibility. It also tends to be important for, frankly, just business goals. Some businesses have requirements around some aspects of markup quality and SEO. Designers love it because it's how you get easy to work with markup, which we'll show you very shortly. And of course, search engines love it because that's the way they actually choose to parse pages. And it turns out that if you have bad markup, the best intentioned site might just get crapped on by Bing and Google and others. So what do you mean by improved? A couple things. First and foremost, those of you who've worked with SharePoint 2010 know that we use tables in a very Web 0.5 kind of way in the past. We're over that. With the sites you're going to see today, thank you. The sites you're going to see today actually have no tables in them, and you can, again, by default, have no tables for rendering web part zones, and other of those objects we used to do the wrong thing of in the past. Second thing, client-side rendering, which also goes by the buzzword AJAX for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. For those of you playing buzzword bingo, I said AJAX, even though it's not on the slide. But client-side rendering is a huge advancement in technology. Most of you probably already know this, so I won't say too much about it. But one of the great things about SharePoint 2013 is sort of the marquee web part that makes up so much of your search-driven sites supports client-side rendering by default. It's a great HTML and JavaScript-based way to do it. Without postbacks, it's fantastic. And I'll show you more of that today, as well as in a session that Jeremy, Kelly, and I are doing tomorrow around content search web part display templates in depth. I just shortened the title, but it's on this related slide at the end. And lastly, we completely rewrote and simplified our CSS. Raise your hand if you liked the way CSS worked in 2010 as far as the number of out-of-the-box classes and selectors. Oh, wait. OK, one person. Thank you. That's great. Not even a plant. So the very first thing we did in SharePoint 2013 in this release was we went to our source control system, we took our CSS files, and we deleted them. And we started rebuilding them logically given what we know now. So the experience that you have is much easier to style, much easier to select, much easier to override. It's a far, far better experience. And when you see some of the markup that's behind what we've done here or in the hands-on labs, I think you'll see that for yourself. So I did want to talk about how much better is better, because it's great to say that you're good. It's hard to prove that you're good, but I wanted to quickly do so. So this is a little test that I did a couple days ago around using the W3C HTML markup validator. And I will note before I start this test that it's a little bit inaccurate to say that clearly 0 is perfect and clearly more is bad. For those of you who've run this test before, if you're designing websites for your clients, you know that some of these errors are really critical to blocking rendering performance and affecting designability. And some of them are somewhat academic, like using invalid attribute names or others. They're still important for those you need to get to 0. But in SharePoint 2013, we made a big effort on, first and foremost, fixing designability blockers out of the box. All right, so quick overview. We'll do the first one, sharepoint.microsoft.com. For those of you who were here in Vegas in 2009, I was one of the people working frantically behind the scenes to get that site up and running minutes before the keynote, and it was a huge achievement for us. But in terms of markup validation errors, we had 138. And of course, some of those are always configuration and data errors on our part, but it's a good amount. So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about where 2013 gets. So we'll do a quick guessing game for everyone. So the next one I've got, the SharePoint Online public website. For those of you who are looking at the public website in SharePoint Online, there's a session tomorrow morning, I believe. We've got all the session numbers in the end of the deck. So we took the absolute out of the box, what do you get when you create a new one of those? No optimizations, no customizations, just out of the box. So quick show of hands. Raise your hand if you think there's more than 50 errors in that site. All right, people who are honest, I appreciate that. I see, I don't know, 10, 12 hands. 19, actually. When you create a new site out of the box, you get 19 errors. A couple of those are around, we didn't put in the alt text for your custom logo, so you actually will get less once you fix it. But it's off to a good start. Contos Electronics, the site you saw in the keynote, and the site you'll see today, down to 13. So again, being entirely honest, not saying that we're showing you something with 0. I can talk at length if anyone's interested after the session about what exactly are the 13 and why they're those kinds that we don't think affect performance. But I will mention one quick thing, too. For those of you familiar with Mavention, they're one of our MVPs. They're presenting at the conference. They were one of the first people to join our TAP program and launch a website on SharePoint 2013. And they actually got all the way down to 0. And we can talk about some of the customizations they have, but entirely possible, entirely doable, something you can do out of the box, and never a slide we would have shown about previous versions of the product. So we're incredibly proud of that fact. Yeah, you can applaud. That's great. I'll pause. Excellent. So search engine optimization is another thing, because it doesn't matter how great your website is. We know that search is one of the primary drivers of traffic to websites, and so if you build the best site in the world and no one can get there, or search engines don't choose to direct people there, what was the point, really? So we've actually done a ton of improvements here that I wanted to talk about. First and foremost, what we call clean URLs. For those of you who've built SharePoint sites in the past and always get asked, hey, can you know if a given website's a SharePoint site? There's a classic trick you can use. Raise your hand if you know the classic trick to know from the URL if it's a SharePoint site. /pages, that's right. No more. You can build the URL. You can control it completely. It's great. And furthermore, you can have a page at /. You can have contoso.com /, and that's the URL that you'll see for a lot of the sites today. Furthermore, there's no redirects to get there. The other thing you could tell if you were doing a traffic inspection was, were there those 301 or 302 redirects, and is that what you wanted? SEO consultants have some differing opinions in black art about which one is better and which one should you use. It turns out we just want to have none. So that's what we did. When you navigate to a site in SharePoint, no redirects, go to that URL, and it's just as good as any other sort of redirect-based experience on the web. Another one I want to talk about, especially for multi-language customers or multinational customers, is country code top-level domains. A lot of search engines will tend to sort of bias their traffic, especially in a given market, to sites ending in the proper domain, so .ca for Canada, .mx for Mexico, .no for Norway, pick your own country. With the cross-site publishing-based model, you can actually make search-driven sites now that both use our variations feature to variate content and have separate country code top-level domains showing all the right content. So a pattern that was incredibly difficult in the past and would have involved lots of copying of content now just works. It's one of those incredible benefits of the search-driven site model. Another one, search engine properties on pages. So again, this is something in the past SharePoint wasn't quite as good at as we wish we had been. Things like you couldn't set a separate browser title from the page title. Now you can. We've given you the ability on every page to set those properties. We've also given you the ability to set canonical URLs. For those of you who know about canonical URLs, the important point is that sometimes you want to specify to a search engine that given URLs and query string should be ignored because those two pages are really the same page. Now we let you do that and get the maximum page rank out of your pages because they're correctly teaching the search engine that these two pages really are the same thing. And lastly, Webmaster Tools integration. Again, something that most web designers and developers could do on their own. But we now have some trivial out-of-the-box UI for a site owner to paste in that little token that you get from Bing or Google Webmaster Tools and put it directly on your site to verify ownership. You don't need a developer. You don't need help. It's super simple. It's super easy. All right. So with that, that's our under the hood part. Let's show you guys a little bit more about that awesomeness you saw in the keynote. Let's talk about the experience that those web designers and web developers get. So first, a fond look back. Let's talk about SharePoint 2010 and the web design process in general. So historically, the way web design works, hopefully this resonates with you, and apologies if you use different words for these terms. I'll try to define them. But the design process, when we went out and talked to design agencies to learn about this process and get it right, always started, frankly, even further back than SharePoint. The first step had always tended to be your design agency would build you some really pretty pictures in Photoshop, and you'd go back and forth arguing about spacing and brand. And at least in the US, where we talk to a lot of design agencies, the term we use for those is comps. But you could think of images, the really pretty things that aren't real, whatever term you want to use. Those would then get re-implemented in CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. And sort of a HTML you could click through, not really hooked up to your CMS, but it looked pretty, and now your developers had something to start with. And that's always been the process, and frankly, again, that's true of really any CMS and most design projects in general, right? That's your plan, that's in effect your visual prototype. But here's where it started to get sad. There's this brick wall over which you would throw those things, and you'd have to create master pages, page layouts, you'd have to figure out where to put the ribbon, you'd have to do all of those processes to effectively rebuild or recut all of that work. And to the credit of our amazing MVP community, there are some great books out there that have been written walking you through the process of how to do this, but they were full books. And we're sad about that because it was a lot of work. And to add, I'll say insult to injury because I think this is a friendly crowd, SharePoint Designer was the tool in which you had to do it all. Which there was a point in time, for those of you who know Microsoft history, we actually bought SharePoint Designer, or its predecessor product, FrontPage, as purely a web editing and design tool. But it's not really where we think the world is going anymore. You might choose to say it's not where the world has been going for a long time. But either way, we're here, and that's the way it was. So let's talk about the glorious future, or actually the glorious present as of today. So SharePoint 2013, right, and how the design process works. So first and foremost, we start out the same way. Again, your designers will still make images in Photoshop. You will still fight about red lines and spacing and fonts. When you get past that, they will give you some really pretty looking HTML that's not hooked up to anything. But in the glorious 2013 world, all you have to do is upload those into SharePoint. SharePoint will automatically convert those into a fully functional master page. We'll put the ribbon somewhere for you. We'll put the placeholder main that you need. And we also even include, if you wanted, a minimal master. Right? So for those of you who've had to sort of search the blogosphere to actually get a minimal.master, we have one in the box now for you too. And of course, once you've gotten past that, now you've got a working master page, but it's not hooked up to SharePoint very much, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. But you might want to add in more SharePoint functionality. You might want to replace that sort of static nav with real nav. You might want to create a real content query to replace those sort of 4 lorem ipsum kind of fake images on the homepage. And for that, we have the snippet gallery that Richard stole our thunder of in the keynote, in which you can use to add all that SharePoint logic into your page. And of course, all of that using Dreamweaver, using Expression Web if you want, using Notepad++, using any tool that you want. We are actually out of the tools business for web design. It's all browser-based. It's all standards-based. Bring your own toys, and we'll help you make it great. All right, so that was telling you. Well, let me show you. So for those of you who are familiar, what you're looking at right here is the website that you saw in the keynote. Let me actually kick the zoom up a bit to make it readable. But it looks pretty good. It's all SharePoint based. It does have that friendly URL. And it has all these controls. So that looks good. That's the end state of the keynote. But I'm going to take you back to the beginning. So here is the beginning. This is a nothing up our sleeves, honest to goodness publishing site. The only bit of configuration we've done is we have used cross-site publishing to hook up the content. So for those of you who can see, let me zoom in to make that a bit more palatable. We do have these navigation nodes up at the top. They are, through the magic of cross-site publishing, already hooked up to working layouts. So if I was to click here and show you, what you're going to see is not the prettiest quite yet, but it works. We're actually pulling out real products from the search index, from the product catalog. Pretty cool. But it's using your standard SharePoint Blue. It's got this default content that is actually much better than in the past. We do walk you through really clearly as an information architect what are the steps you have to do in an order that makes sense. As a visual designer, what do you want to do in an order that makes sense? But again, not really pretty, and I'm going to show you in the next 15 minutes how we're going to get pretty damn close to the end state of that demo. And I will challenge any of you to try to have done anything this fast on either SharePoint 2010 or, frankly, even your WCM system of choice. So let's check it out. So first and foremost, the place we're going to go that Richard alluded to ever so briefly is the Design Manager, which is accessible here in Site Settings. There's also a link to it in the Visual Designer content. But we're going to start here in the Design Manager, which we're going to spend a lot of time in today. We'll show you each of these steps in depth. I'm going to take the liberty of skipping through the device channel step, and we're going to go straight to the step called Upload Design Files, where I'm, in fact, going to be asked, any second now? Great. So what it's telling me in Upload Design Files is I should map this file location, which I've taken the liberty of already doing. And if you've got pre-existing files, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, let's upload them. And in this case, I do. Let me show you that really quickly. I've got right here these really simple set of files. Let me boot up Dreamweaver, again, to prove that we're serious about this. And here is the index file. So on the right, you can see, looks pretty good. It's got lorem ipsum text for the nav content, because again, it's not hooked up to anything. If I was to look over here in the navigation, right, here's my links. It's just a simple UL. Doesn't really go anywhere. But it works. It exists. It's reasonably pretty. So let's turn that into a working SharePoint master page. So for that, all I have to do is go to this drive that I've already taken the liberty of mapping, copy paste, try again. All right. So with that, all my design files have been copied up. Just like that, it's there. And now, the very next step that I'm going to do is go to the Edit Master Pages guide, because again, this is a wizard. As a designer, I don't have to know much about SharePoint other than start going in order, and I'll learn what I need as I need it. So as I go edit the master pages, what you'll see here is I've got some text teaching me what a master page is. I won't read it to you now. And I've got a couple of links. I can make a minimal master page if I had no HTML to start from. But in this case, it says convert. That sounds great. That sounds like exactly what I want. So with that, I'm going to click convert. I'm going to click convert. There we go. I'm working on it. By the way, for those of you who haven't seen the Working on It t-shirts walking around the SharePoint conference, they're priceless. I don't know who made them, but I desperately want one. So I'm going to pick that index file that I just uploaded. I'm going to hit Insert. And just like that, behind the scenes, SharePoint's actually going off and making me a fully working master page. So there it is. And let me show you really quickly what I mean by that. So as I said before, we're not in the tools business. We are giving you a browser-based interface. The first thing you'll need for your HTML master page is a preview in the server. All right, let's try this one more time. Shake out the demo gremlins. All right, let's see. Oh, right, there's giving me some error on the design assets. I bet we're missing a CSS file. OK, sorry, one quick copy-paste error. I will encourage you also, when building your own site, please don't just use a demo network that's being shared by 15 other people doing demos right now. I encourage you, have a dedicated environment. So we're going to let that copy. All right. Sure. let's see how fast that's going to go. All right, getting better. You can see the files coming in. So the thing I'll talk about really quickly while we're doing that is, in fact, what SharePoint has done to make me a working master page. So this is what we call our server preview page. All right, getting better every click. All right, so we'll just wait a second. I'll talk you through it. So what we're doing here is a server-based preview that lets you see how that page is rendering. And while we're doing that, let me quickly also go to Dreamweaver and open this page up so you can see, in fact, what's going on. So I'm going to go to Open. I'm going to go to my map drive. All right, let's go to the index.html file. Again, what I'm editing here is straight HTML, right? It's not ASPX, or it's not .master, it's not ASP.NET. And it is, in fact, fully readable. I'll switch that into live view so we can get some good-looking nav. All right. Let's replace the files. Awesome. So as that's going, now over here, what you can see on the right, let me quickly go into the preview mode. We'll get back to the source in just a second. A couple things you'll see here. SharePoint has changed this up a bit, but the preview is actually working in Dreamweaver pretty well. All my content's still there. There's a placeholder here for where the ribbon's going to go. There's another placeholder here for where constant placeholder main is. So the idea is, as I go preview this on the server, which by now should be ready, excellent. So as you can see, as I preview the server, I have a real ribbon. I really do have, for now, constant placeholder main, because I'm not previewing this in the context of a page. But of course, that's probably the best way to design. So we gave you that option. So you can go in the preview page, you can specify what you want the preview URL to be. And then we'll use that URL when we render the page. So if I was to set this, for example, to the home page, so now you can see this really is rendering, or actually if I scroll down, you can see it really is rendering the demo content, right? There's my same helper links. They're using the CSS of the page. And of course, you're thinking that's the wrong spot. I know. But the point is, we wanted the model here to really be one of sort of, the page is always working, and as a web designer and developer, I'm not trying to make it work, I'm trying to tweak it. So by default, we put the ribbon at the top of the page. We put the constant placeholder main at the bottom. And now let me show you how to fix that. So if I'm to go back into Dreamweaver and reload it, because I guess the CSS is updated. Come on, Dreamweaver. All right. So now I've got the same markup here, and as you can see, I've got the divs where I want them. And what I'm going to do is quickly select this div. Let's go over to the source view really quick so you can see what that looks like. Let's see. So here's, we have this div called placeholder main. We create these divs for all the snippets we insert, and this is actually your first ever snippet. I know Richard alluded to them in the demo, in the keynote, but let me tell you briefly about how every snippet works. It is a div. It always comes with a preview that you can see on the right. So as a designer, I know where it is and roughly what it's going to look like. But it's got these commented outlines of markup that SharePoint will use behind the scenes to make a working ASP.NET master page. As a web developer, I don't have to know anything about what these mean, nor would I want to. All I have to do is take this div, and in this case, let's try to put this in the right spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, come on. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sample image, right? I'm going to delete it, and I'm just going to paste in that markup. I hit save, and just like that, assuming I don't hit Richard's Dreamweaver bug, it's about 50-50, by the way. For those of you who want to know, it really is a Dreamweaver bug. That wasn't marketing speak. We are talking to Adobe. I'm happy to share what it is later. I will not kick a competitor's product on stage. Only previous versions of my own. So, but if I reload the server preview, now we're getting somewhere. Still the wrong content, because it's still that default content, but now it's actually in the right spot, right? So as a designer, slowly, slowly getting it to the page that I want it to be. So that part's easy enough. But now let's fix up the navigation, right? Because again, this is still lorem ipsum. I really want this to have that electronics product catalog. So to do that, let's jump into the snippet gallery. So to do that, I just click on the snippets link up here. And as I do that, any moment now, the snippet gallery is going to come up in all of its glory, showing me a couple things, right? First and foremost, the thing I want to point out, there's a whole ribbon of all the different controls that you get. There's things like navigation, the search box, site title, site logo, sign-in control. All these controls that most users haven't seen, but they're described in the way that they functionally work. And so the hope is that as a designer, I know how to grab those things. If I want that search box that Richard showed, right, I can just grab it. But for now, let's do navigate. Oh, and the other thing I'll mention as well, all of the web parts that I might want are there as well. And we're going to show more of those in a second. So all those web parts, all those controls that were buried deep in the SharePoint Designer toolbox, all available at the tip of your fingertips as a designer. And whenever you pick one, like the navigation one that I've picked here, there's a whole bunch of information that you get on this page. First and foremost, in the top right, we've got some educational text. We wanted to teach web designers and developers what you need to know about what this control does, how to configure it. So in the case of navigation, it tells you all about, you can go to navigation settings to control those settings and change it in the ways that you want. And down below, we have the entire set of properties that you can set on this control, and we've even promoted some of the most important ones to importance. So you can figure out which ones you need. But in this case, I'm going to leave those the way they are. We happen to have done such a good job configuring the defaults for this snippet that it's exactly what I want. I have a preview up here on the left that shows me how it renders. So I can see here that the audio category, for example, is already showing my levels underneath. Right? So as someone who, again, doesn't know much about SharePoint, I can have this experience where I can poke at the settings and I can see my changes immediately. So again, without knowing SharePoint, I can use the preview, make sure I've got it the way I want it. And when I do, down below is a whole bunch of markup that I can just copy and paste. So I've got this nav snippet. We've configured it the way we want it. So now let's go back to Dreamweaver. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab, I'll reload. Thank you, Dreamweaver. So what I'm going to do here, now that I've got this, I can grab that navigation UL, right? Again, using Dreamweaver's handy-dandy select tools. Hit delete, paste in mine, hit save. And just to show you, what Dreamweaver is actually going to do is we do have a real preview in place here as well. So when I click over to Live View and refresh, I do, in fact, have the real navigation, because we've put a static preview in there. So it's not the live one, because it's just a static file. If I added a nav node, it won't show up. But the point is, as a designer now, I can update my CSS classes if I needed to, my JavaScript behavior. I can make sure this looks right, kind of like it was a static file. Sure enough here, I've done a good enough job with basic semantic markup that my navigation just looks great. So sure enough, if I go back to the server, hit refresh, all right, and we're in business, right? Beautiful working nav, really hooked up to the product catalog. Really, really simple. OK, so we could continue doing this for a while, of course. But let's skip ahead a few steps. And let's go back to the Design Manager. And let's go ahead and publish and apply this. Let's say that we're happy with it. Let's quickly make sure that, great, we've got that approved. So I'm going to just go publish my design, right? Imagine that I was totally happy with it. Let's set that up as a real master page. To do that, again, there's a link in here telling me exactly what to do. I don't have to hunt and peck in site settings to figure out where this is. I go to assign a master page to my site. And I'm going to change the default channel. I know there's a non-default channel. Ignore that for just a moment. We're going to talk about that and how awesome it is in just a minute when Alyssa talks to you about our mobile and device targeting features. I'm just going to apply this. And as I do that, if I were to bail out of Design Manager and go back to the home page, site's live, right? I have my master page up. I can click over to any category that I want. The master page is just inherited, right? Navigation's there. Really quick, really easy way to just get your navigation up and running. So we're partway there, and I'm 8 minutes in. All right, so let's really quickly make this home page look a bit better, too. So let's go back into Design Manager. And what we need to do, right, going in the sequence, is we're going to edit the page layout for the home page. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new page layout. And in SharePoint 2013, we've, again, tried to make this incredibly easy. I'm going to call this Contoso Welcome. I picked the master page I want to base it off of, because it will help make your previews work correctly. I picked the content type, which is welcome page. And I'll tell you in just a second how great it is why we do that. And as I do that, behind the scenes, there is my welcome page. Right? Let me go in and preview this really quickly for you. All right, and what you can see here is a note. One, it doesn't look good yet. I know, we're not done. But again, just like before with the master page, what you're seeing here on the server is we've actually inspected the content type, and we've by default included field controls for all of the fields that are unique to this type. So in this case, my welcome page content type out of SharePoint, again, because I didn't customize it, includes a bunch of fields. It includes a page image, a page content field, right? I don't actually want all these for my page, but the point is, as a web designer and developer, I never have to learn what a field control is. I make a page layout. This is what it looks like. If I don't like it, I change it. It's that simple. So let's go change it. So I'm going to go quickly open up on my map drive my new page layout, which of course just appeared. So Contoso welcome. There you go. HTML file. Just going to edit it with Dreamweaver. All right, as I do that, and I'll reload it, thank you. And apologies, there is one CSS bug in the demo, so ignore this icon. But the point is, oh, and let's go into live view so it looks not nearly as bad. All right, the point here is that, again, there are all these controls. I can see them on the left, right, showing me all of that markup. So I can see here, I have these divs for me. It says things like start page field, summary link snippet, so I can tell which one they are. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just delete all these, because this one, being the home page, actually, let's go a little bit up higher. We'll do this the quick way, since scrolling on this monitor is probably not fun for you guys. We're going to go ahead and delete all the stuff in placeholder main. And to speed things along a bit in true cooking show style, I have a bit of markup that I'm going to paste in. And as I do that and click over, let's see what this starts to look like now. All right, so now, all right, let me hit save really quick. Oh, there we go. All right. So as I do that, let me go back to my preview, hit refresh, because again, that's the model. Just edit and preview. All right, and now it's looking pretty good. I've got this rotator control in place. All right, got a quick rotator bug. But let's go ahead, and now let's delete. Now, that's all well and good, but for those of you who remember the Contoso Electronics homepage, the finished one, it has this great content search happening. So let's go do that. So to make that happen, I'm going to find the spot in here where I actually want to delete some things. So I'm going to delete this entire div. Any second now. All right, and now let's go get a content search web part, which I know what you're thinking, probably really complicated, but it's not. All we do is go back to the snippet gallery. Because this is a page layout, some different controls have shown up. Now I have the page field control. But in this case, what I want is a content search web part. So I'm just going to go pick content search. And as I do that, the content search web part control is going to show up. Complete with its web part tool pane, complete with a preview. Again, so really easy to work with. So it's got a default query, not the one I want. So I'm going to hit change query. This is, again, a screen that Richard showed you in the keynote. I'm not going to go into it in a ton of depth because there are complete sessions about it. There's a session both that Jeremy, Kelly, and I are doing tomorrow on the depths of display templates. There's lots of sessions in the search track. If you want a good session to go look this up, we have one on the follow-up slides. But really quickly, I'm going to go pick from my product catalog to show products. That looks pretty good, desktops and laptops. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to choose to show 3 items. That looks great. And I'm going to pick a different display template because this is a design session and you guys should get something prettier. So let me go ahead and pick that display template. I'm going to hit update. And again, for those of you who want to learn more about how to build display templates, we have a whole session tomorrow afternoon with Jeremy and I. As you can see, this is a jQuery-based one, so it does this cool little pop-up thing. It changes the colors. All right, that looks pretty good. So let's copy that to the clipboard. Done. All right. Can I refresh that? All right. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm going to refresh that. All right, the benefit of design teamwork. So back into my tabs, right? So I'm going to go into my very first tab. I'm going to paste in that markup, hit save. And now the thing you'll note is a preview is going to appear once I let design view catch up. Let's try that out. Let's flip over to design view. All right, let's not flip over to design view. Let's go back to what we have on the server. Again, I'm not going to kick any competitors' products. It would be wrong. All right. There we go. Excellent. So the thing I've got here, which I've put slightly in the wrong spot, but you can see here working content search web part. Let's see. Let's do the quick try to undo and fix, since you guys deserve the prettiest possible site. Do I want to be inside the A? Oh, all right. We're missing a CSS reference. So in that case, never mind. Yeah. All right. So Alyssa will do some quick demo fix-up. But the thing you'll see here, again, is on the site. I've got this page looking almost like I want it. Again, design teamwork is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So now that I've got this the way I want it, I've got some real content in place. Now what I can do is go back to my site, go back to the home page, again, which just has a slash. And I'm going to change this home page to use the layout that we just made. All right, so all I have to do, go to page, page layout, find that Contoso welcome layout that we just made. I'm going to save and check in. All right, and just like that, I can go back to our home page. And sure enough, what you've got here, again, in 15 minutes, completely branded, using real navigation, using real search results on the home page, right? All of which fully working. And again, I challenge you in your own CMS to do anything that quickly from just your starting HTML and CSS from your design agency. All right. Thanks. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to my co-presenter, Alyssa Levitz, if she has a CSS working. All right. So quick recap for you before I turn it over to my co-presenter, Alyssa Levitz. The really quick summary for everyone, right? How did we do this? There's a couple things. First, there's the step that we didn't show behind the scenes, which is configuring cross-site collection publishing. We don't think of this as a step that designers should necessarily do on their own, but rather, this is a step that once you have your information architect help you out with, you can now do the full design, because cross-site publishing will auto-create those default layouts that I showed you for the category and detailed pages. You'll have the real navigation nodes working. It's a great way as a designer to get started with the real corpus of content, so I can do something live and interactive. Convert your HTML design. As you saw, we just uploaded it, and SharePoint made a real master page for us that we started to edit. And lastly, make your content, make your page layouts for your welcome page, for your content pages, and use the content search web part wherever it makes sense. Of course, you can use any web part you want. But the point being, all of this experience should feel like a fairly natural, iterative, I'm building up from something I understand, not, oh my god, this is my first SharePoint project, I need to go find Andrew Connell's book right now. Please do buy his new book. There's a lot of good stuff in it. But instead of being about the basics of getting started, now it's about some more advanced stuff, the way that, frankly, MVP books always should be, as opposed to papering over some of our deficiencies. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-presenter, Alyssa Levitz, to talk to you about some of the amazing things we've done in mobile and device targeting that I conveniently skipped over in the last demo. Alyssa? All right, great. Hi. Unfortunately, as amazing as the mobile stuff is, I am not as amazing at troubleshooting the demo on stage. So we're going to, when we look at it later, we're going to pretend the CSS is perfect. But so I want to talk to you about mobile device targeting in SharePoint 2013. We all know devices matter. I mean, I bet almost everyone in this room has a smartphone. And the experience of browsing a site on your phone is very different from that on a desktop. And Morgan Stanley predicts that within the next few years, the amount of web traffic that is hit from a smartphone will surpass that of web traffic from desktops. And so what does that mean for us as web designers and developers? We want to have a customized design. We don't want to use all of our visitors' data plan, but we also don't want to sacrifice search engine optimization with an m.contoso.com, for example. And so what is this? How does SharePoint 2013 help us with this? And I'm going to introduce a couple of concepts before actually diving in and demoing it. The first thing I want to talk about is this idea of device channels. And with device channels, it allows you to control your mobile experience based on the user agent string of the device your visitors are browsing from. So here, for example, we have the Nokia Lumia's user agent string. User agent strings are really, really long.
And chances are you probably don't want to design specifically for the Lumia 920. You want to design for Windows phones in general, or you want to design for iPhones. And so you can pick out different aspects of that user agent string, and that becomes the way that your device channel picks up a number of different things. So once you've created these channels, what is it that you would actually, what would you be doing with those channels? The first thing is that you want a differentiated design. Mobile phones have a smaller screen real estate. Mobile phones, you want touch-based things. Hover just doesn't work when you're trying to touch it with your phone. And one way we allow you to do that is have completely separate master pages for each channel. And so that allows you to account for the different screen resolutions. Another thing we allow you to do is target content to different channels. So while you still author all of your content in the same set of pages, and those pages are served across device channels, some of that content may be more relevant to certain channels than others. So if you want to target your mobile customers with a particular ad because you think they're out and about and more likely to buy a computer than someone who's already sitting at a computer, that's something that you would be able to do with device channels. So I'm going to plant that seed in your head. The other thing I want to talk about is image renditions. When you are creating a mobile site, you don't want to have the same image on the mobile site as on the desktop. Because again, on a mobile site, you have less screen resolution to play with. You have a smaller screen real estate. But at the same time, you don't want to have to manage 7, 8, 9 different copies of the same image, one cropped this way, one sized that way, one with the same size but a slightly different aspect ratio. You want to be able to control all of that easily, and you don't want to have your content authors have to remember which copy of this image do I actually want to put on the page. You want to have a little bit more control. So in SharePoint 2013, we've introduced the concept of image renditions, where we help you manage that out of the box. And the idea there is that you get to specify a set of image renditions to go across your site. You get to specify height, width, aspect ratio. And then for each image that you upload to the new asset library, you then get to go in and say, for this image, this is what I want the 200 pixel width to look like. This is what I want the 600 pixel width to look like. And using image renditions, the right one will be served to you on page render. You don't have to think about that. So for example, we have this lovely large image, and we want to show this on our mobile site. But this is way too much going on for a mobile site. So we have defined an image renditions that's 200 pixels wide, say. So then we go, and for this image, we crop that image to 200 pixels wide. And then when we reference it on the page, all we see is that image itself. And it's not that we're kind of on the fly shrinking it, but we first downloaded that whole big image. We are actually serving a smaller version of that same image. So now I want to actually get into the demo land. Climb over Ethan trying to fix the CSS. And all right, let's switch over here. So once this shows up, we're going to see our site design. But I want to show you what our design currently looks like when we go to it on a mobile device. So here, I have my Nokia Lumia Windows Phone 8. So here we have this. We'll come back to that in a second. This doesn't quite work. It's really small, and I want to look at tablets, right? Oh, you have nothing. Thank you for saying something. If I go like that, you know what would help if I projected? Corey to the rescue. Oh, wait. No, that's Ethan. False alarm. Oh, if I use the right input, I'm 7. Ta-da! Okay. Thank you, thank you. All right, take 2. So we have our phone, and this doesn't really work. Our font is really small. I want to look at tablets, which is under computers, and I'm just going to like keep pressing, and it's hover, so that's just no good. So we're going to just totally revamp this site with the same tools that you saw Ethan use for the desktop version. So before we actually get into that, I want to think about image renditions again. So we have this great big banner that when we saw it on our phone, we could tell that's not something that we really want our mobile users to see. That is a really large image. So hold on 2 seconds. Delete those things. Those things. Okay. So we want to create an image rendition for this. So beforehand, one of the things I did was I actually set up these image renditions. But I want to go to the asset library and create specific renditions for our different images. So I'm going to go to Site Contents and then the asset library, our images library here. And here we see all of our scrolling images. So when I go into this, when I click on the ... I get to edit the renditions. And that's going to take me and it's going to show me what that image looks like for every single rendition that is defined on our site. But I have this mobile banner image rendition. And so it's going to be 320 pixels wide, as we see here. But it's far too squished. So I want to change this. When I change this, I get to choose the aspect ratio because I've only picked the width. But I'm just going to move this around and crop it a little bit. And then I'm going to save it, and we'll come back to that and reference it later. And we'll just scroll down to double check. Yeah, I think that looks perfect. So we're going to save that, and then we'll come back to it. So these are just all the different renditions. Now that we have the idea of image renditions in the back of our brain, let's go back to talk about device channels. In the Design Manager, one of the steps that Ethan said we would come back to later was this idea of managing device channels. So beforehand, what I did was I created a device channel to capture mobile traffic. So let's actually look into what does it mean to capture this mobile traffic. So I'm going to view this item, and I've specified several things. I've specified a name just so I know what's up. The alias is something that we're going to refer to later on when we're referring to it in code. It's something that you can use to actually, if you have JavaScript, will be able to capture that alias and use that as a variable so that you can do additional work based on what channel you're on, for example, in display templates. And then we have this device inclusion rules. And what those are, it's user agent substring. So rather than taking the entire Nokia Lumia 920 string, I just decided that the thing that I really cared about was I wanted to make sure that I was designing for Windows phones and that people using Windows phones were going to have an experience that met their needs. So I did that ahead of time. But as you saw, we're still using that desktop master page. And that desktop master page doesn't work for our mobile site. And so another thing that I did ahead of time was I had created a touch-friendly version of this master page that Ethan had built. And so once again, we're just going to go ahead and apply that master page. So rather than follow the default channel, which is what happens as soon as you create a second channel, we are going to instead change it to a master page that we specify, that we say, you know what, this is touch-based nav, it has larger touch targets, and then we will switch back over to our phone and see that in action. So we'll go back home. And boom. So here we have a different banner on top. We have a different navigation system. This is touch-friendly. It can go back and forth. And so we're not relying on hover behavior anymore. But as you can see, we still have this really large image. And that image was specified in the display template. That image was specified in the page layout. So what we're going to do is go into that page layout and make that page layout work across our devices. And so now, when we're going to edit our page layout, let's go again into Design Manager and preview it, I want to introduce you to another snippet, and that's the snippet of the device channel panel. And similar to a number of controls that you might have been familiar with in SharePoint Designer, we have what we call these container snippets. So a security trim snippet, if there's some content that you only want to show to authenticated users, or an edit mode snippet where there's some content, some description that you only want to show to people who are actually editing a page. But so we've also created the device channel panel snippet. And what that allows you to do is to have content that is targeted specifically to a channel. And so we're going to do two things. First, we're going to hide that banner from everything other than the default channel. And the way we do that is by saying that we want to include only the default channel in this snippet. So when we update the snippet and copy it to the clipboard and then open that in Dreamweaver, master page, we were doing Contoso welcome. So then what we're going to do is move all of that control inside the device channel panel snippet that says, hey, everything in here, only show it to the default channel. So when we find it, so here's our placeholder main. I'm just going to copy that device channel panel in. And one of the things that you'll see is, once again, similar to content placeholder main, we have by default included a bright yellow div that says, hey, this is what's going to show up in that device channel panel. But we don't, of course, want our end users to see that channel. Live view. Awesome. We, of course, don't want our end users to see that yellow panel. What we want is to delete that and show them that rotating banner. So I'm going to take this whole view, all of those tabs, and I'm going to cut that out of there and put it inside that device channel panel. And one of the things to note with that device channel panel is the included channel's default. That's the alias of that device, of that default master, of that default channel. So when we paste that in and save it, Dreamweaver bug, second time's the charm. Once we save it, we're going to go back to the home page of our website, and it should look exactly the same, because we're on the default channel right now. However, when we go back to our phone, I'm going to refresh the page here, and that banner is going to disappear, because this is not the default channel. It is the mobile channel, and the user agent string was captured, but now we have no content, and that's really sad. So what we should do instead is replace that content that worked really well on the default channel with something that's going to work equally well but specific to mobile. So let's go back to that idea of the image rendition. The image rendition was something that we created for that image, and we want to reference that image within its own device channel panel. But this time, instead of on the default channel, we want to show it on the mobile channel. So once again, we're going to change the properties of our snippet, and we can see that it updated, and we're going to copy that to clipboard once more. And in Dreamweaver, I am going to then have outside of that first channel, I have a second channel. And one thing that I want to do differently so that we have it is all of those tabs, I decided, I really do want those to show up on the mobile site as well. Oops, sorry. I think that's right. That was not right. Sorry. I've lost, okay. Well, we won't worry about that. But so now we have that device channel panel that is only for our mobile site. But, and we want to think about what is it that we want to show there. We don't want that big banner image. Instead, we want to reference that image that we specified the image rendition for. So I have this reference to our image. And I'm going to copy it inside the device channel panel whose included channels are mobile. So it should only show up on the mobile site. So we'll delete that default div that showed us what's going on. And we're going to paste that image tag in there. And this is a standard image tag like you would for any other image. The difference is that we have this query string at the end that says image rendition that's width 320. And that means 320 pixels. And then what will happen is on page load, we'll ask the server, hey, can you deliver us the image rendition that is closest to that width that we specified? And luckily, we'd specified one that was exactly 320. So that will serve us that right image. Let's try saving one more time. OK, and so now, again, when we go to our home page, we should see it exactly the way we would, because that image was only supposed to show up on our mobile channel. And in fact, we don't see it here, so let's hope it showed up on our mobile. So when we go over here and refresh the page, we see our image showing up here. And this isn't just, again, that smaller, it's not just a squished down version of that image. I want to show you what that image actually is. One of the ways you can easily debug your device channels is by appending the query string device channel equals the alias of whatever your channel is. And so here, now I'm seeing my site as I would if it were mobile, but now I have IE developer tools much more readily accessible. And so if we wanted to actually look at what this image is, that's only 320 by 168 pixels. Whereas on the home page, that image was 960 pixels across. Think of that sort of concept applied across many images all over your site, and think about how much faster the browsing experience is going to be for your users on your site. And so with that, I'm going to call our mobile site good. And if we switch back over to demo. So we did some mobile device targeting. And I just want to talk about mobile applications quickly as well. Because as good as it is to be able to browse to your site on a phone, being able to use the native experience of a phone or a tablet can just be a much more immersive and high-quality experience for your users, depending on what you're looking for. So we have, there's a session you can go to learn more about this. But so we've talked about how you can create the desktop version of your site and how that relates to the mobile version of your site. And all of that is served up by search content and that cross-site publishing content and the search API. And that search API is available as well with the REST API so that you can build native applications with that same base of content so you don't have to modify your content and manage your content across all of these different platforms. And I want to talk one more thing about design packaging. So with design packaging, chances are that your design agency is not working in the same environment that you are actually in production on. So I want to go ahead and just show a demo of that. So again, in the Design Manager, your one-stop shop for all things design related and publishing sites in SharePoint 2013. Don't want to add a page right now. I want to go to the Design Manager. We have added a step for you, creating a design package. So I'm going to create this design package. And while that's creating, it's going to take all of those assets that I was working on, and it's going to export a solution file. So you don't have to go through and think about what files did I touch. I need to create my own solution package. We're doing that for you out of the box. Yes. And so once this design package is created, I'm going to then import it to another site just to show you how full this process is. So we have design.contoso.com/package destination. So here, our package is ready. I'm going to download it and save it to my desktop so that it's available. And you can imagine that I'm the designer. I have finished my SharePoint design, and I'm ready to give it back to you. And you're going to apply it without any knowledge, without having to worry about what is there. So I'm going to save it to my desktop. And then when I come over here, again, we have already done the catalog connection. This is our in-production site. And I want to import the design package. So my lovely design agency has given me that design package, and I'm going to import it. And while it's importing, the things that it grabbed was everything within the master page gallery and publishing images in the style library that I have touched. So it's not creating a giant package that has every single out-of-the-box file that we shipped, because we decided that we didn't want to use some of our out-of-the-box page layouts. So in this design, we're not spending the bandwidth to actually put all of those files in the solution package as well. When we're importing this design package into another site, we're going to change all your links so that it's any references to design assets that you have are going to be pointing to your new site rather than your old site. And also, in addition to those design assets, we're also taking over your image renditions file. We are taking over all of your master page mapping. So what channels you've created, what user agent strings they're using, and what master pages are you using for each of those channels. And when this package bit gets applied, all of that will be applied at the same time. And we're working on it. Yeah, actually, this is a great time for a question. Do you want to step up to the mic? There's a mic right there.
What about the document library that was referenced from the content search web part? The content query web part.
So assuming you're working in the same environment, that query you said, you specified a result source. And as long as both sites have access to the same set of result sources, it will still work. But again, you can imagine where some of those web parts wouldn't actually, you might want to reconfigure them as well. Do we want to switch to the?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll come back to this really quick. So a couple things to note. So can people hear my mic? No?
Did you turn it on? Yeah.
All right, there we go. All right, so a couple things to note while we're waiting for that package to import. We'll jump back momentarily for the big reveal. A couple of quick things for everyone to know. This is a slide that hopefully you've seen throughout the session, so I won't say much about it. There are some great hands-on labs where you can play with all these things. There's Ask the Experts tomorrow night, where Alyssa and I will both be there at the table. So come over, bring a drink, bring us a drink, ask us questions. We'd love it. And lastly, I wanted to leave up this slide. I'll come back to in a second. This is just a subset of the sessions that are going on in the Web Content Management track, or the Web track, I believe. There are a whole bunch. I'll plug one particular one, or a couple particular ones. One of them tonight at 5 p.m. There's a session we're calling 0 to Live in 60 Minutes. That's where you'll actually see Alyssa and several other SharePoint conference speakers building a real live Contoso site in 60 minutes. So all of the steps that you just saw, as well as search, as well as navigation, that's where you'll see it all if you want to see some
as
frantic...
well as variations.
Yeah, and variations. So if you want to see some frantic site building, it's like nothing we've ever done. And again, the fact that we can do it in an hour is awesome. There's also a session I mentioned a few times, Wednesday at 1:45, that I'm presenting along with Jeremy Kelly. We're going to go deeper into how to build some amazing looking display templates. And one other quick thing I'll say, please fill out the feedback. It's super important. It affects both the priorities of what we do next time. For those of you who left some feedback at the SharePoint 2010 conference about, hey, we wish you did more in web content management, hopefully you see how seriously we take it. Also, as speakers, we compete to see who's the best. And I really want to win, because then I get a free beer from someone. So if you like this session, please leave feedback. If not, you can send feedback directly via email, both to Alyssa or myself. These are our email addresses.
Let's do a quick reveal of the
Yep.
importing of a design package, then we'll take a couple questions. So here we can see the import has succeeded. We go to our site that was the plain vanilla SharePoint out of the box, and now we see our master page applied, and we would then go through and apply our page layouts as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Great.
Do we have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned the device channels. It looks at the user agent strings, and it seems like there's new devices coming out like every 6 months to a year. So how do we maintain and keep up with all these new user agent strings that are coming out?
So I think with anything, you want to make sure that you're thinking about what you want your mobile solution set to be. And as you hear of devices going through and checking their user agent string, as soon as those new devices come out, you can just go and edit those device channels themselves anytime you want. And if you have your user agent strings generic enough, like Windows Phone rather than Nokia Lumia 920, it means that you're not going to be quite as sensitive to every single new device that comes out.
So it's a separate file that stores all the user agent strings that we can
Yeah,
edit?
so there's the user interface that surfaces that I showed, but you can keep updating it as much as you want.
We wanted to show a tool that wasn't ours.
Yeah.
That's it. You can use any tool you want. There's no reliance on any tool.
Hey.
Hello.
Well, we've coordinated how we talk about it.
So from your real mock-up that you imported into the site manager, the classes, the CSS classes that you use there, were you worried about matching the SharePoint classes?
So the CSS classes we used when creating our HTML design comp were things that were specific to what we were looking at and wanted to, they were specific enough that we knew that they weren't going to have any conflict in terms of names with SharePoint classes. One thing that you do want to do when you're importing that HTML design is to then, when you're previewing it, some things might not work quite like what you were expecting because you do have that baseline of SharePoint CSS. And there are a couple of particular tweaks that you want to look out for. But in general, you should be able to start from a pretty clean slate.
Okay, so but the idea really is that the designer that built the mock-up doesn't really need to be concerned about those classes.
Correct.
Or on the other side, is it a good idea to try to match those classes at some point?
I would say you wouldn't want to try to match those classes. I would start from scratch and then tweak as needed in case there are certain things in conflict with each other.
Okay, excellent. Great
Thank
work,
you.
guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh.
Is this working? I've got a few customers where on the mobile devices, on an iPad, they want to be prompted to say, do you want to go to a mobile site or stay on the iPad site? And so I'm looking at cookie-based types
Sure.
scenarios for that. Is there anything in this version?
Yeah, we actually have that functionality effectively out of the box. One way that we didn't show to optimize for mobile channels is you can set a persistent cookie. And we will honor that and ignore the user agent. So you could very trivially build the JavaScript, and in fact, we have code samples we can share at some point once they make it to MSDN, where you can effectively have the cookie that's the button that says on-click call your function, where your function writes device channel equals default, or whatever your channel names are. And forever then on, we will respect it, and we won't go by user agenting. That takes precedence. So yeah, that pattern is 3 lines of JavaScript to write a cookie.
Okay, and so it's up to you to in working out how long that should be persisted for?
Yeah, it's up to you for how you want to write the cookie, right? You can write a permanent cookie, you can write a cookie for a week. That part we basically, similar to I guess the theme of this session overall, we wanted to be strategic about where we add value and where sort of web standards do enough. Cookies have a great time to live expire date model, so you can set whatever you want and we'll just honor it.
Okay, and on the iPad devices, does it cater for, because I've once again written them before, the viewport as you move from landscape to portrait mode, or do you have to refresh each time? Because I've found that on an iPad in particular, many changes.
So you can use responsive CSS as much as you want within this framework. If you want to see designing for iPad in action, come to the 0 to Live session tonight.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a great question, and frankly, the question was, I'll paraphrase a bit, I'm surprised that you're giving me the ability to target different master pages as opposed to just responsive design, right, where you'd use sort of CSS and others. Well, yeah, media queries in particular. Frankly, the reason that we built this model is to enable you to do both. Even on SharePoint 2010, you can still specify CSS references that are responsive, that will either hide or display things dynamically or change orientation. You can do all of that in SharePoint 2013. That hasn't changed. The thing that we saw in talking to some customers was that there comes a point where they wanted to do drastically enough different designs, or frankly, even just from philosophical opposition to, I don't know if responsive design is quite what I want. I might want something easier to preview. Or I might just want to say radically different experiences where just using CSS to sort of show and hide things would still force users to download everything. So for that reason, we built in the notion of panels, right, and separate master pages per channel, so you can use that flexibility. However, if you're a responsive guy, what you want to do is you can just have one channel and you can put in that one CSS reference to your responsive file. That works great. That was just the case that we knew was going to work regardless, and so we wanted to enable the full range of experiences. And that's why we demoed this one today, not because it's the one we think everyone should use, but rather that's the pattern you could not do before.
Yeah. I want to add, make two things clear about that. One is, one of the things I didn't make clear enough in the demo was device channel panels, it's not CSS hiding. It is actually, it's server side making the decision about should I actually send these bytes over the wire. And so that's something really strong that responsive design is not going to be able to account for. And so given that, I think one of the best practices would be to have a desktop design and then like a desktop design with however much responsive CSS you want, and then a mobile, like a tablet design and a mobile design, each of which has as much responsive CSS as you want because, for example, the Lumia has incredibly high resolution, whereas my Windows phone is a couple years older, so it's much smaller. And so, but it's still a very small, like physical inches wise. So I think that combining the two gives you a ton of power.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. Can the design manager do master pages for collaboration sites, more intranet, more so than external websites could? And also, the second part of the question is, what about adding custom web parts or out-of-the-box web parts to your master pages?
Yes.
So two things. As long as publishing is turned on your site, whether it's intranet or internet, Design Manager is your tool. And it just requires the publishing infrastructure. As far as the web parts go, if the web part exists in your web part gallery, which if it's a web part it would, there will be a snippet for it in the Design Manager. Yeah.
Yes?
With the live preview you were doing in Dreamweaver, is that a feature of Dreamweaver, or is it WebDAV? Yeah, the fact that you've got a Z drive pointing to the master page, and you're able to refresh. Although it was a .html extension, I assume it's being processed as an ASPX file.
It's a great question, and first and foremost, as a Canadian, thank you for saying Z correctly. I greatly appreciate it. But more importantly than that, the way that snippets actually work, to answer your real question, is that every snippet includes two conceptual components. It includes some commented outlines that don't render in Dreamweaver at all, but sort of are the hints to SharePoint of how to build the real .master or .aspx off the file. And we also include a read-only preview, so we include some actual HTML. So that file that Dreamweaver, or whatever tool you're loading, because again, I know you're going to see a lot of Dreamweaver this time. It's not an endorsement. It's just one of the tools. But it's static HTML that would work anywhere. You could actually even preview that thing in IE and without a connection to the server at all. It's a static rendering that we grab when we hand down the snippet, and it's purely to drive the preview. So there's no server connection needed. There's no WebDAV magic happening. It's just we have some HTML in there that SharePoint knows that when it converts that HTML file into the real master page, we delete that static preview, and we replace it with the actual ASP.NET controls.
Okay, so the preview HTML is inside that those commented
Correct.
tags?
In that big meaty snippet that we didn't show you every line of in depth, there's a read-only preview section in there that actually contained, for example, for navigation, there was a UL-LI structure in there. And it's designed so that, again, whatever tool you pick, no matter how much it knows about HTML and no matter how little it knows about SharePoint or CMS, rendering just works. It thinks it's editing a static HTML file on a network drive. Yes, any other questions?
Two questions. For the image renderer, when you take the large image and you make it smaller, does the server actually compress the image to smaller bytes that make sense to the device?
Yes, that's exactly right. So the way it works is, on the server, we're using Windows image components to effectively create a separate rendition. So we're actually re-encoding that image at a smaller size, at a smaller width. So it is a different size. Like if you compare the payload size of those two things, the original might be, let's say, 13K, and the shrunken one might be 6K. Of course, your mileage may vary depending on what rendition size you chose, et cetera.
And then the other question is kind of similar to the web part. When you're using third-party web parts in either your publishing site or
It's a great question. Let me briefly convert it into a slightly broader question to talk about third-party web parts in general and how things work. As Alyssa mentioned before in response to a different question with web parts, any web part in the web part gallery automatically gets a snippet through the snippet gallery. We enumerate the set of web parts. We create a snippet for you that you can insert and customize using the web part toolpane that they all have. If they correctly support, I forget the name of the interface, but there exists and has for many releases the preview interface. It's actually how SharePoint Designer used to get its WYSIWYG previews. So as long as they've implemented that, you'll get the same great preview experience as well. And as far as how they render dynamically, and this kind of goes back to Alyssa's point about mobile channels and different panels, you have a ton of flexibility as far as what it takes to make them work. Of course, the better the markup that your custom web part had, the easier that will probably be. But you have a ton of control. With device panels, you could have different CSS if you wanted to style them if they're not smart enough to be responsive. You could wrap the whole web part itself in a different panel if you needed to and say only show this one on the desktop and show a completely different parameterized one on mobile. So you have a range of control. And then, yeah, at some point, it really is a question of the quality of markup that that third-party web part emitted. But any web part, any updates they make or whatever they have today will just work. There is no strictly required additional work to get your custom third-party web part to play nice with the snippet gallery in the new design model.
I have a follow-up question for that.
Okay.
Would that actually work? I think it was kind of his question. Would those web parts work with the image rendition? So if I want this web part to use smaller images, is that going to work?
Let's see. The short answer is it depends. As Alyssa alluded to, the way that the image renditions feature works is fairly open. It's anyone who asks for the URL with the query string parameter saying width or height, we will give them the best match rendition. So depending on how your web part fetches an image, if it has that query string added to it, or if you even wanted to hack some JavaScript around it to go update the href, right, that it's asking for to have the parameters, it will just work. So
like that default web part you showed at the bottom that had
yes. Yeah, and in fact, the content search web part actually has some specific parameters over what renditions to show. And that's a great example, too, to plug one more thing we didn't mention. There's also, in JavaScript, a variable we expose that is what channel am I on. So in that case, for that specific case, if you wanted to be smart and build a content search web part with display templates that just worked on the tablet, let's say on the touch channel and on the default channel, you could add sort of the if statement in the JavaScript for that display template that says, if desktop channel, then here's the rendition size I want. If touch, then here's the rendition size I want. Technically, any web part can do it, and because of our display template model, which again we'll be talking about at length tomorrow afternoon, because of that, it's really trivial to just tweak the template and get it. Different web parts, depending on what they expose via declaratively versus code, may require a bit more work, but it's entirely possible. The platform's totally open to that.
Which URL switching?
Sure, I can take that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all of the above. So the thing, I'll direct you, there's actually a session, am I still up? The session you want to hear the answer about that is today at 1:45. It's SPC 180. Overview of search-driven sites and cross-site publishing. The truth is we've done a ton of work around what we call managed navigations, the idea that you can build a term set that is your site's navigation that controls the hierarchy and directs to URLs. They can tell you a ton more about it. It's way more powerful than I can do justice to here without making you guys miss lunch.
Yeah. Oh.
SharePoint Designer 2013 is a fantastic tool for building site workflows and some other administrative customization. I encourage you to use it for that purpose. But I didn't really mention it today other than to sort of kick it retroactively. That's all. So the tool still exists. It's fully supported, but it supported a range of scenarios. This was one of them. We've decided there are better ways for people to do this. We wanted to unlock people to use the tool they want. So it's still there. You can still use it for many other scenarios. But for doing web design, if you are going to tell me next that you really want to keep using SharePoint Designer instead of something like Dreamweaver your tool of choice, you'll be the first person in 2 years to tell me that. So if that's the case, I'd love to hear it. Instead of answering that, I will direct you to a session, actually, that's coming up.
Yeah,
Is
Dave,
still
when's
here?
your session?
Dave, when is your video session? Yeah, Dave Tone is doing an entire hour on all the work we've done with video, where that is one of the things we did, but there's so many, I'm not going to even try to get you started. Just go check out Dave's session.
Sorry. My question is related to HTML5 and browser support. So previously, I've had HTML5 designs, and I've actually had to roll them back to XHTML during my migration process because things like Selectizer and Modernizer on IE7, particularly around the ribbon, would take up to 45 seconds to load up a page because it's trying to, convert everything to more so that it renders.
Mm-hmm.
With SharePoint 2013, have there been improvements with the ribbon HTML, and I guess would you recommend going forward using HTML5, particularly IE7 is still around quite?
Yep, it's a terrific question, and I'll answer it, I guess, in stages. First and foremost, out of the box, the master pages and page layouts the Design Manager builds are HTML5. That's the doc type we generate. Everything you've seen today was running on IE10, HTML5. We did do a bunch of work on the ribbon to make it HTML5 friendly. Though again, try it out. If you hit issues, let us know, because I always hate the blanket statement of this will work fine for your project, because there's always a ton of variables. But we've tried it. It works great. And as far as IE7, there's a bunch of choices you get to make. With the device channels feature, it would be really trivial to make a device channel targeting IE 7.0, and then saying that, oh, then I'm going to do something else for those guys if you want to. There's a bunch of other strategies for dealing with IE. You mentioned modernizers, so clearly you know about some of them.
Yep.
We've given you a ton of power and choice, and really as far as what's the thing you should do, it's going to depend on exactly what your site's doing, and are you better off using something like Modernizer or just trying to give a fallback experience. And again, it depends on exactly what you're doing. I'm happy to follow up in email or in some other conversation about it.
Okay.
Yes? So it's a great question, and it's one that's always tricky to answer in numbers because, again, sort of like the validator errors, it's not necessarily that less or better. The thing I will say is that while I believe the number is fairly similar, it's been entirely rewritten. To prove it, there's only one file that gets downloaded now instead of many. And if you try the experience in the hands-on labs of how easy it is to override, it is orders of magnitude easier. So again, the wrong measure here is like kilobytes of CSS or number of selectors. But it is infinitely more designable. And the fact that, to go to Alyssa's earlier answer around should you match up CSS classes, the fact that we didn't and it was so easy to do is telling. So the best thing I can say, I'm sorry I don't have the marketing flashy number that says how much better it is. Try it in the hands-on labs, and then you will see how much better it is. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a ton of improvement that we've done around fixed width in general, frankly, designability. I mean, actually, what you've seen, everything we did today was a fixed width master page. Mm-hmm. Yep, so there's absolutely nothing that stops you from building master pages for other kinds of sites with this. We actually had in the Design Manager under Publish and Apply Design, you can change the system master page as well. Everything we've shown you here, you can do with both. And when you design other kinds of sites, the other kinds of web parts that exist on those sites will show up in the snippet gallery. So you can do it. It's honestly just something we didn't have time to show. We filled the hour just doing this kind of site. But try it out, turn on the publishing feature anywhere you want, and go to Talent Design Manager.
Yeah. We'll be around Ask the Expert.
Sorry, we'll do one last question.
One more question, yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the term you used? Oh, DWIPs, DW, for web parts you mean? DWP? Oh, themes. Yeah.
Theming.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes.
So, a quick plug about theming and how we see those things playing out. In the theming space in particular, there's a great session that if you go tomorrow to the SharePoint Online public websites, we'll talk about this in depth. The theme concept still exists. However, we've intentionally taken it in the direction in 2013 of being more about designers creating a set of composed looks out of which users pick. So there's no more users get the color palette and build MySpace-looking pages. Because it turns out that was just giving them a really powerful rope with which to hang themselves from a design perspective. So there is and it'll be shown tomorrow on the Small Business Public website, though you can use it elsewhere.
And there's also a second session that's just about theming and composed looks. Not,
Oh, excellent.
I don't know what their session number is or when it is, but Lionel Robinson.
Excellent.
So one is for SharePoint Online small business websites and how to apply that concept to a small business publishing site. But then Lionel Robinson and Jonathan Kern are doing a session, I believe sometime tomorrow, but I'm not entirely sure, on theming and how to create those composed looks.
Yeah, and as far as how it relates to Design Manager, we really do, the experience we optimized for here was around someone who was going to create a bespoke design, right? So the theming world exists. Frankly, you can still use it with this. There's nothing that stops you, similarly to 2010, of creating CSS files that have the correct token references to get replaced. It's not a path we tried to promote in Design Manager simply because when we think about someone spending this much time to hire a web design agency, they're not the ones who are going to build you the green, the blue, and the red color palette. They're going to follow your brand, right? If you're Starbucks, you'd be green and brown, for example, and so they'll bake it into design. So theming has gotten a ton better. There's a whole session about it. You can use it with Design Manager, but it's not the path we expect most people to follow.
Did you try it on, because if you try it with the SharePoint Online Design Manager, that actually serves as a different set of UI that helps walk you through the theming more than this UI does. Because this UI doesn't show theming at all, because like Ethan said, we're expecting that if it's a bespoke design, like if you're Coca-Cola, you don't want someone to turn it a pink theme. But so there is another set of UI for small business websites.
Yep. All right, any other questions? I will apologize. We do have to run, I think.
Yeah.
But one last question? Anyone?
No.
No? Great. All right, then thanks so much. Again, we'll be at the Ask the Experts. Please come by. Please go see the rest of the web track. And most importantly, if you liked the session, please leave feedback. It means a ton.